Welcome, everyone. Today is a very special day. We have an incredible guest on the podcast joining us today. And this is a continuation of our Blueprint series where we bring on world renowned experts in the modalities of human design, astrology, gene keys to help us to better understand our divine blueprint so that we can work with our unique energy signature and soul purpose. And it is such an honor to introduce today's guest, Karen Curry Parker. And Karen is not only a best-selling author of multiple books, but she is the creator of the Human Design for Everyone training system and the Quantum Alignment system. She has been speaking, coaching, training, podcasting on these topics for almost 30 years, and her work has been featured all over the world, including Fox News, Bloomberg, Businessweek, CBS, and ABC. Wow, Karen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Are you back? Sorry, I froze there. I'm so sorry, Emily.
No
So
worries. I would
I'm
just
excited to be here. I was making a dramatic entrance, so it's exciting to be here, and I'm eager to talk about human design or quantum human design.
Absolutely. I want to start by asking you what your design is personally and how you got into this, using this tool in your work that you do.
So I'm a manifesting generator, um, and my story with human design is kind of a long story because I've been sharing human design and teaching human design since 1999. I really always tell people human design found me, not the other way around. I definitely wasn't looking for it. I was at the time when human design found me, I was raising my four kids in a Houston suburb. They were little, they were like 5 and under. And my husband at the time went on a spiritual retreat to Sedona, Arizona, and he came back with a chart. And I saw that chart, and a lot of people have this experience with the chart. I literally I saw it and I just started to cry. And I just knew I had to know everything I could learn about this chart. So I ran my chart. In those days, you had to wait a couple of days to get your chart back in the email. And I saw my chart and it said manifesting generator, which upset me even more because I was like, wait, I'm not a generator and I'm not a manifester. What am I? Right. And at that moment, I just said, that's it. I'm going to go learn everything I can about this. So at that time, the place in America to learn about human design was in Sedona, Arizona. So we put the house on the market. We literally sold the house within 2 weeks, packed everything up, and hit the road with the kids and went to Sedona, which is not where the story ends. It's actually kind of where it starts. So when I got there, my youngest son, who was 3, had an ear infection. So we went to the pediatrician's office. I went into the pediatrician's office and came out after his appointment with this kid on my hip. And across the hallway was a door. And on that door was the human design symbol. So I thought, well, I'm just going to go in here. So I opened up the door and there was a giant desk and a little woman behind the desk. And she said, oh, did you come for the job? And I said, well, yeah, I did. So it turned out that that was the headquarters for human design in America, Human Design America. And I was hired there and worked for Human Design America for a few years and had the privilege of being able to train and learn personally from Ra'uruhu. Was out at that time. This was pre-Jovian, everything that was available in terms of materials and things that I could study and learn about human design. So that was the beginning.
Wow, what an incredible story. I have full body chills as you share that because it's such a soul contract almost and calling for this incredible modality.
Mm-hmm.
And you've really brought forth such a new and innovative way of approaching this system with the quantum human design. And I'd love to explore, how that downloaded for you.
That's a good word. So human design, and this is really what Ra used to teach. Human design, as it's taught right now, traditional human design, we'll call it that, is really designed to be used to wake up what Ra calls the not self, or your conditioning, to decondition you, to kind of get your attention, to give you a vocabulary to help you discover who you're not. Because you can't figure out who you are until you start to really untangle yourself from all those different things that your conditioning, your society, even we know now, even your ancestral lineage have taught you to be. So the language of traditional human design is kind of, he used to call it the science of awakening, because his intention with the way he taught human design was to literally, he was, cross of the clarion. He had the 51 as part of his design. So he was all about kind of shocking people awake, right? When we learned to do readings, he would say, get in, do reading, do it in 30 minutes, hand them a box of tissue and walk out, right? Which I can't do because that's not in my design at all. But that's sort of the nature of traditional human design. What Ra always said was that someday he would write the vocabulary for the awakened human. He wanted to create what he called an awakened ray Viching. And he passed in 2011, so he never got to complete that part of his work. I don't want to be so bold as to say I'm continuing Ra's work. Ra had his own body of work. And my original training is in nursing and in coaching. I was one of the very first life coaches trained in the world. I come from a therapeutic background. I'm an energy practitioner. In the work that I was doing with my private clients, a lot of my clients were coming into human design and very quickly saying, this doesn't feel right for me. I see that there's something here, but it's not fitting. And of course, my question has always been, well, how do we take this incredible tool and use it to help people optimize their potential? And so for years, I sat with, okay, it's not quite fitting some of my clients. And certainly I would say as time went on, more and more of my clients were showing up, I would say already awakened, if you will, already somewhat deconditioned, if not radically deconditioned. They'd been doing breath work, meditation, tapping, whatever. And so they were showing up into the arena of human design and saying, hey, I like this, but it's not big enough. I need something more expansive. So I started to really explore, how is the language not fitting? Where is the language feeling stuck? Where is some of the ways that we're talking about human design feeling limited instead of expansive for people? And so slowly, actually, I kind of started it even with my Understanding Human Design book a little bit. Already in that book, I started to change some of the language so that it wasn't as heavy. Because I think some of the language, traditional language, is a little bit heavy. So I started to rewrite the language. And at a certain point, I started to think, language actually carries a frequency. Language, in fact, if you go and you go to the lab and you start speaking words and you speak it into water, or there's different ways you can measure, different words have different frequencies. And I started to explore, I could show you, I have a giant thesaurus. I started to become obsessed with the thesaurus, and I started to go into the lab literally and start to measure the frequencies of language, and particularly the frequencies of the vocabulary of human design. And I knew I didn't want to redesign human design. Human design is perfect. It's an amazing system, but I knew that some of the language needed a little bit of an upgrade. And so over about 3 years, I began to rewrite all of the vocabulary of human design. And so quantum human design, if you will, was born of that journey of figuring out how do we elevate the frequency of the language. And I would say, and in conjunction with that, we also had to evolve some of the core ideas in human design, and in particular, the idea of strategy. Because strategy was another place where I felt like I didn't feel like I had so many people come to me and say, strategy doesn't feel right to me. I get it, but it's not how I work anymore. I could see where 5 years ago or 8 years ago or 10 years ago, I needed that. but I'm in a different place. And so when I started to go back and say, okay, it's not just the vocabulary, maybe some of it is strategy. And I have to say, I'm really hesitant to say this. I don't say this very often out in the world. I usually say this more with my students because there's such a merit to following strategy in the beginning of your journey with human design. I don't want people to skip that in the beginning of your human design journey, that if you skip that step, this is for all of you manifesting generators, if you skip that step, you'll be sorry. You'll figure out really quickly, oh, I should maybe go back and do that. Built into strategy is the idea, and this is true of all types, even manifestors, there's the idea that we have to wait. Manifestors have to wait for inner alignment, that inner synchronizing that has to happen with all their different energies. Generators obviously have to wait to respond. Projectors have to wait for the invitation and the recognition, and reflectors have to wait that 28-day, 29-day cycle, sometimes a couple of times. The brilliance of strategy in the way that it's taught in traditional human design is that it teaches people to stop. And that the very first thing we often have to do in the deconditioning process is stop everything. We have to stop all the pushing. We have to stop all the actions that are rooted in our need to prove our worth and our value. We have to stop all the things that we're doing because we're terrified that if we don't do them, we'll be unsupported, broke, etc., we'll fail. And so that waiting part of strategy really serves the purpose of bringing people back home to themselves. The heart and the root of human design is teaching people how to reconnect with their own inner authority. That inner authority isn't external. We think it is because the waiting strategy thing for most of us feels external, but it's really more about connecting to your internal connection to yourself. What does it feel like when things are right? What does my inner voice sound like? What is my divine guidance or my cosmic self or my higher self? What is that voice of that guidance sound like? And most of us forget. We get disconnected from the body. We get disconnected from our gut. We get disconnected from the sound of source, if you will, in our heads. And so we have to have that pause piece as part of the deconditioning process because it helps us remember. And in a lot of cases, it helps us heal. And in particular for the projectors, it helps us heal our sense of self-worth. That's true for all of us, but for the projectors especially, if that sense of self-worth isn't strong and solid, is a projector, you're going to go out in the world and you're going to take any invitation you get because you got one, right? And you won't take care of yourself. You won't value yourself enough to say no or to rest. And so that waiting piece and that reconnecting with that inner wisdom piece is essential. But once that's over, once you really get back in connection to your own inner authority, then the waiting doesn't have to happen in that same way. You're able to then actually go into the shower and get a download, if you will, and you'll know the difference between versus, oh, this is a divine inspiration. This is source saying, hey, go do this. This is your next right step. And you, as I said, you can't skip that deconditioning piece because otherwise you're going to be lying to yourself unconsciously, not on purpose, but you'll get confused still about, is this my conditioning or is this source? But once you go through that process of really saying, oh, I remember what I sound like inside. I remember what my body remembers what truth feels like. When you go through that piece, then strategy itself starts to change. You're no longer having to wait the way that you used to have to wait in the beginning. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's so beautiful and such a helpful reminder. And I want to go back to something that you shared in the beginning, which was when your husband brought home his human design
We're way
program.
back in the beginning. Okay.
That you actually, started crying. There was such a profound, palpable connection. And I've heard you describe it as, looking at one's chart, you have a better understanding of one's soul curriculum. And I'd love to just explore what are some other insights that one can receive by understanding their chart.
Mm. I love that question. So, I talk about the chart as being your soul curriculum. It's a really beautiful way to codify why you're here. I have to just really say, because I think we have to be really mindful when we talk about human design, especially any of us who are in a teaching position with human design. Again, the root of human design is not for people to follow what I say or anybody else says. The root of human design is for you to feel what resonates as truth for yourself and follow that. So I really wanted to say, this is the world according to Karen. And any of you who may be watching or listening, you'll have your own worldview. And if you resonate with mine, awesome. And if you don't, mine's not absolute truth. There are innumerable truths available. You get to find your own truth. So go with where you resonate and what feels right to you. But in Karen world, that was the great signifier there. In Karen world, I think we come here to learn. I think it's a really unusual and beautiful place where we get to embody giant energies in this very specific, kind of condensed way, right? We have some really unique things available to us on this planet. We're third dimensional. That's a pretty unique thing in the cosmos. The soul the chart outlines kind of what you came here. In every chart, there's what I call a core conundrum. Every chart has some aspect that's in conflict with another part of the chart. So let's say, for example, I'll get technical here for a minute. If you have a lot of individual circuitry in your chart, if you're here to be different, and you have hanging gates in your chart that are tribal, that long for connection, it sets you up to have an entire lifetime of exploring, how do I make peace with the uniqueness that is me and still also be in a place where I feel and allow myself to be supported and in community with others. And recognizing that when that doesn't happen, and it's hard when you have a lot of individuality and tribal circuitry, when that's not happening, it's not personal. It's not because you suck or you're not worthy or you're not lovable. It's because you're just not in the right place with the right people. And the more you hold your value and know yourself, the more you pull into your experience those right people. So the chart codifies this beautiful curriculum, and it makes it so much easier to understand what is it all about. If we don't have the chart, and many of us didn't have charts for big chunks of our lives, right? And you start to have adventures in the world, and you start to date a bunch of people, and you're like, why do I keep dating the same person in a different body? Or you start taking, sequential jobs that don't work out or whatever. If you don't have the chart in front of you, it can feel a little bit like, wow, if I have to reframe this, there's so many potential things I could be reframing. Is this my ancestral lineage? Is this my self-worth? Is this a thing that happened to me when I was 12? The chart actually gives us a very nice sort of outline, if you will, of, oh, here's this core conundrum that's showing up in my life again and again and again. Every Saturn return, every Uranus opposition, every Chiron return, it's showing up again and again because this is what I'm here to learn. And it gives you so much more control, if you will. It certainly takes out, I think, some of the randomness of understanding why we keep doing the things that we do, why we're in the patterns that we're in, why we're conditioned the way that we're conditioned, and what it's really about. So that we're no longer victims of our reality. We start to be able to look at our reality and say, oh, here's this beautiful mirror. It's showing me in my external world this conundrum. It's materializing everywhere. Cool. What would happen if I reframe this conundrum this way? Oh, look, out here now I get these results. What would happen if I reframe it this way? Oh, that was way better. Now, as I'm maturing in my journey and I'm getting a better grip on how to build this bridge in all these parts of my chart, I can see it's giving me more wisdom. It's helping me create better relationships, more peace, recognize support in a different way, connect to my purpose in a more expansive way. It's process is probably should have just said that first. So
Do you feel like there's a connection between human design and the chakra system?
I do. And in fact, in some of the work that we do with more of the I'll call it the alignment piece, the quantum alignment system, we definitely look at the relationship between the chakras and the centers. So we know if we look at the chakras, that the chakras represent core archetypal themes that influence our wellness and our energetic stability. So when we look at, let's say, the heart chakra, we know we're looking at the themes of the G and the themes of the will, and that those two play together. When we look at the solar plexus chakra, we know we're looking at the themes of the spleen and the themes of the emotional solar plexus. And it helps us sort of look at, okay, when we're looking at this through the lens of the chakra system, how do these pieces fit together? I always look at the chart. Ra taught the chart is a synthesis of these wisdom teachings. And he would say, because of that, it is in and of itself its own thing. And it is. I mean, it's different. But I don't think that you can take the chart apart without acknowledging and honoring the different wisdom teachings in the chart. There are core concepts rooted in each of those wisdom teachings that influence our understanding of the chart itself. So, for example, if we look at the I Ching has built into it the idea that the awakened human or the evolved human is going to make a certain set of choices. I mean, that's kind of what the lines are in the I Ching, right? That you're going to make a certain set of choices to express the highest potential of that archetype. The chakras, same thing. You've got these karmic destinies, if you will, that you're untangling as you consciously move through choosing how to live out the highest expression of these energies. The Judaic Kabbalah is all about choice. I mean, Kabbalah teaches there's a Bahira point, a choice point, every time you make a decision about anything, and you have to consciously keep yourself regulated to choose to be closer to the divine in your actions. Even quantum physics, teaches us that our perception and our experience of reality is influenced by the choices that we have. So choice is built into all these different parts of the system. And as such, it really makes sense then that the system itself teaches us that we have choices, and we can consciously choose over the course of our life how to bring out the highest elements of the archetypes of the chart.
Oh, I love that. That is so beautiful. So it's really about attuning to what the highest expression is. It sounds like, and to really know what your energy signature is, you're able to live in such a greater alignment to that energy and really raise your personal frequency as a result. And
Mhm.
multitude, being in greater alignment to your purpose, being in greater to alignment to abundance, whatever that looks like and feels like for you. What would you say, in all the years that you have taught and shared this modality with hundreds of thousands of people around the world, what really lights you up in this now moment?
About human design?
Yeah.
So, one of the things that is, I have the gate 16 defined. So I'm going to go now. To me, there's like 12 things. I'll have to weave them all together really fast. The chart is a storytelling tool. If you think of the chart being comprised of archetypes, well, archetypes are just parts of story. We're all living our personal story. And that narrative, that story we tell, is a key element that influences what we choose. The more we take back control of that story, the more we can consciously choose to live out the highest element of the chart. And this is the part that excites me more than anything, the more we tell really good stories about ourselves, stories that encompass the highest potential of the chart, and we move and live and breathe and create into that space, the more we literally elevate our frequency. We move ourselves into a state of high coherence where we are calibrating the electromagnetic resonance field that resides in the G center, the monopole, to create at this high level. If we look at physics, basic physics, not even quantum physics, if we look at physics, we know from physics that frequencies affect each other. High frequencies lift up lower. By the way, not the other way around, right? So the more we embody our authentic selves, the more we take back control of our story, the more we tell a really good story about who we are, the more we learn to influence what we create and attract into our experience, the more we fully occupy the potential of the chart and the high frequency state that's available to us, that highly coherent, highly creative space, the more we not only create for ourselves really amazing lives, the more we create a wave of energy that lifts other people up with us. And so I really believe that human design is here on the planet at this time for that reason, that we are in the process of, and we see this in the story of the solar plexus mutation, we're in the process of dramatically shifting the way in which we create. We're in the process of moving into the potential for us to create from a higher place of the solar plexus mutation and the themes brought to us in February, in the incarnation cross of the sleeping phoenix. We see the potential for us to be creating in a state of consistent and sustainable peace. We see the potential for us to be unifying ourselves around common ideals that are designed to help us take better care of each other. We see that we're moving into a whole 400-year cycle where we're learning to create by virtue of our frequency, not by moving the mud of the will center, right? And so the work that's in front of us right now is to get our stories cleaned up, to take good care of ourselves so that we can elevate our own frequency. And then, it's not even like we have to consciously do this. It's natural when we live and create from that place that we naturally turn around and give that to everyone else around us. That we want to, from that place, when we embody our own enoughness, we want to turn around and give that to everyone else because we understand from that place of enoughness that there's no lack. We're not in competition with each other. We're all in it together. And it benefits every one of us, all of us, for all of us to be lifted together.
I love that so much. It is so beautiful what you just shared. And I have so many questions. One thing that I want to ask you is could you touch on the significance of the solar plexus and the sleeping phoenix?
Yeah, yes. I'll try to keep it simple because I know that I can go down a rabbit hole with that. So if I get too far down the rabbit hole, just yank me back. So in the original teachings from Ra, he was given a prophecy. And that prophecy said that the chart itself is changing. Now, it's not the first time that the chart changed. In fact, the chart already changed around the 1780s. And in that first change in the chart went from being 7-centered to being 9-centered. So the heart chakra split into the Jima will, the solar plexus chakra split into the spleen and the solar plexus. This shift gave us a soul curriculum, if you will, of reframing and discovering or remembering our innate value, how to take back control of our own story. And most importantly, it gave us the curriculum of learning how to redefine value outside of physical metrics, meaning we stop measuring things with numbers and we start redefining value as that which brings us well-being, that which creates greater well-being and moves us towards embodying, and we're not there yet, but we're still learning, embodying the idea that all life is inherently valuable because it exists. And because of that, we restructure how we do life as human beings. That learning curve, if you will, sets us up for the second shift or change in the chart that is slated to happen. In this shift, there's a lot of people talking about like, oh, we got to prepare and be ready for the apocalypse, blah, blah, blah. Remember, we already went through a shift in the 1780s. There was not an end of the world at that point in time. Zombies and aliens didn't land. We're fine. We were fine then. We're already in the shift. The thing that we forget is that the shift happened after the end. It happened at the end of the scientific revolution, meaning it happened after consciousness had already shifted to embodying the energy of the will center. We've been in the shift since the beginning of quantum physics. We've been in the shift since the late 1800s. So it's not like all of a sudden February 2027 is going to roll around and poof, half of us are going to be left behind and all the children are going to be on another planet, which is, I know, I hear very interesting stories and versions of this. We're in the shift. We're all being affected by the shift. It's not going to be instant. It takes time and humanity is evolving. In this new shift, part of what's happening is the earth itself goes through global cycles. Those global cycles are regulated by, those of you who are familiar with astrology, the precession of the equinoxes. So they last about 400 years. We are coming out of um, gosh, I have been getting this wrong all week. So it's not the incarnation cross of service, it's incarnation cross of planning. I have said service all week. So the incarnation cross of planning, where we actually are in a cycle where we were designed to learn about community and willpower. We're moving into the incarnation cross of the sleeping phoenix, which has the gates associated with it, the 3420, the 59, and the 55. The 55 becomes the driver energy for this cross. Basically, what's happening is we're moving out of the idea that we have to create through will and effort into the idea that we move or we create in the world by virtue of our faith and our ability to consciously harness emotional frequencies as part of our creative power. Now, any of you have ever heard of Abraham Hicks, if you've watched the movie The Secret, if you've read anything written in the 1920s, Ernest Holmes, Madame Blavatsky came a little bit earlier, Rudolf Steiner, any of these new thought teachers, Speak and Grow Rich, and Neville Goddard. We've been doing this thoughts create your reality thing for a long time now, which is really kind of the predecessor information, the preceding information leading up to this shift. Really, this shift just solidifies the idea that thoughts create emotional frequencies. In fact, we know this. When you have a thought, your brain creates a photon storm in response. That photon storm causes the brain to create neurotransmitters. Those neurotransmitters in turn create an emotional frequency. That emotional frequency calibrates the heart either into a state of coherence, which is a highly creative state, or non-coherence, which is a disruptive state that's unhealthy and unsustainable. When we know how to not just think good thoughts, but have a story, a narrative, I'm supported, when we have those kinds of thoughts in conjunction with our narrative and our stories, then our body produces emotional frequencies of energy. That's the solar plexus that calibrate the heart and the magnetic monopole to then create things that match the frequency that we've given out. So the whole way in which we create, keeping it short, which is what I should have started with again, the whole way we create is changing. And basically, we're learning how to become deliberately creative and we're learning how to untangle ourselves out of reactive patterns and consciously start to choose what we really want, what really feels good and right, what is actually sustainable and peaceful and enduring on the planet.
That resonates so deeply, and it's exciting to hear about, and just so fascinating how that prophecy is in alignment with other prophecies as well. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. I want to go back to something that you shared, which is around telling ourselves better stories. And I was wondering if you could share maybe an example of a profile that maybe has an element of conflict and how we might resolve that and tell ourselves a better story.
So let's look at, if we're going to specifically look at profiles, let's look at the 1-3, one of the more common profiles. In traditional human design, we call the first line the investigator, the third line we call the martyr. In quantum human design, we call the first line the resource, and the third line the explorer. The first line, if you have a 1-3 profile, you have to learn by studying, gobbling up data, learning. The internet was made for you. If you have a third line profile, your role in life is to go out and then experiment with the information that you've gleaned. You have to go try it. And oftentimes what happens is in the process of exploring and experimenting, you try everything that doesn't work because that helps you get better and better and better at knowing what does work. The reframe, if you will, on that narrative of the 1-3 is that if you are a 1-3, from your depth of knowledge and wisdom that you've learned through your studying and your exploring, you know what works based on your experience of what doesn't work. You have done the legwork on that experimental journey for others so that you actually are a resource for other people. You're a guide who has the ability to bring to the table the knowledge and the wisdom and the experience to help people know what the next right step is. That's a really powerful reframe for that 1-3.
Yes, that is. That is so helpful. Thank you. It makes me want to do a deep dive and explore the way that you reframe all the different profile types. I think that is so valuable and helpful. And what it brings up for me as you're sharing is this idea of, working in teams, collaborating, and the value of knowing other people's unique energy systems.
Mhm.
Probably beyond any other modality, I can just see the value in this system. And so I'm curious to ask you how this has played a role in, knowing yourself personally and being able to build the incredible business that you have and also to create harmony within your team.
I would say that I have to say, I'm not. I think about this a lot, and I struggle with this question because I'll tell you that so much of it has happened organically, and I want to say it's happened organically because I think that human design itself as a system has such a deep desire to serve humanity that I think anybody who's bringing it forward, whether you're a specialist or an analyst, or you're a teacher, or you're just sharing it with your friends, that anybody that's transmitting this information is serving the system, and it really wants to be spread, because I think it's, for whatever reason, there's mysteries around this, but however, for whatever reason, that, or whoever whatever brought it here, it wants to be used as a tool to help people remember the beauty and the power of who they are. In terms of how I've used it to grow my team, I would say, I am blessed with some of the most extraordinary human beings on the planet as my team members. And, um, knowing their design allows me to support them in bringing their brilliance to the table as a team. Um, and I could say, yes, we have a lot of projectors, which we didn't have for a lot of years, and they're amazing. We've got manifesting generators like crazy, which, good thing we have projectors. We have, I know people's charts. I know their designs. It certainly helps me be most honoring of what they bring to the table. But I have to also add just a little asterisk mark here, Emily, is that people oftentimes talk about, well, what kind of design should I hire? Or what kind of person should I date? And I will tell you, I don't use human design that way. And I don't think anybody should. I think human design is a gift to help you respect, love, cherish. That sometimes is that there is a cosmic plan, I think, in Karen world. And that cosmic plan is going to put the right people in front of you. Those people are either going to be there to teach you something, or they're going to be there to support you and lift you up in your growth in a different way. Knowing their design is to help you honor, love, and respect them in the best way that you can. It is not supposed to be a tool that we use for employment or for dating. Go with what the universe brings you, because that'll be the right person. And then use the design as a tool to help you see them and love them the best way you can.
I love that you bring this forward because I feel it's so important. Oh my goodness. Karen, this has been such an amazing conversation. And I know that we've just even, scratched the tip of the iceberg. We'd love to have you back on the show sometime to
I would love
further,
that.
yeah, explore. I just want to honor you and thank you so much for your wisdom, your heart, all the knowledge and love that you bring forward and share so generously. It's such an honor to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah. And finally, I would love to ask you where listeners can go to learn more about the coaching and the schools that you offer.
Thank you. So probably the easiest place to find us is go to our website. It's quantumalignmentsystem.com. And you can get to just about anything we offer from that site. So it's a good place to get started.
Awesome. We will link to that in the show notes and also to your Instagram, which is such a wealth of information. I highly recommend checking that out as well. Karen, thank you so, so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Emily.